They say every marriage breaks quietly before it shatters. Mine broke on a Thursday. The morning started like any other coffee. Silence. The faint hum of the city bleeding through the windows of our apartment on the 21st floor. Eleanor was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone, her robe loose at the collar. She looked like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I'd spent months pretending not to see it, the late-night calls, the sudden business trips. The way she started locking her phone screen when I walked in. But that morning, I decided to stop pretending. "Who is he?" I asked. Her hand froze halfway to the cup. A pause, then a slow, careful sigh. "Don't start, Michael." She didn't deny it. And that silence was all the confession I needed. I work in risk analysis for a corporate security firm in Chicago, one of those companies that pretends to protect other people's secrets while burying their own. You learn to see patterns, to read between gestures. The numbers always tell the truth. People never do. For years I thought I was good at keeping my life in order. My job, my marriage, my routines, everything fit. But as I sat across from her that morning, I realized I'd built my life out of glass, transparent, fragile, waiting to break. She finally said, "It's not what you think, but it always is." By the end of the week, she was gone. No fights, no explanations, just a short note on the counter. "Don't look for me. It's not safe. Not safe." The words stuck with me. They didn't sound like guilt, they sounded like warning. So I did what I've always done. I looked. I still had access to her work records. She was a financial analyst for VentureCore, one of our firm's biggest clients, a company known for aggressive mergers and shady offshore subsidiaries. I traced her last login to a private network server located outside the city, registered to a shell company called Helix Integration Systems, a name that didn't officially exist. That night, I drove out to the industrial zone near Joliet, long-abandoned factories, chain-link fences, the sound of freight trains groaning through the dark. The address led to a gray building with no signs, no lights. Inside, everything smelled of dust and oil. I found a half-burned folder near a terminal, still warm from recent use. Inside were two printed emails. The first was from Elena. The second was from my company. She hadn't left me for another man. She'd left because of something far worse, and my own firm was involved. I drove back in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my hands shook. It wasn't love I felt anymore, it was something colder, sharper. The kind of anger that doesn't shout. It whispers. When I got home, I noticed the window in the living room was cracked, just a thin fracture across the glass. I hadn't seen it that morning. It caught the city lights, splitting them into 100 fractured reflections. For a moment, I saw myself in each one, the husband, the fool, the man who believed he understood truth. Then I realized something else. The crack wasn't from the inside. Someone had tried to get in. That night, I found a flash drive hidden inside her vanity drawer, small, black, and marked. When I plugged it into my laptop, a folder opened automatically. It contained encrypted files and one video titled Horizon_Truth.mp4. I hesitated, then clicked .static. Then Elena's face appeared, scared, pale, whispering into the camera. "If you're watching this, they know. Don't trust anyone at Stratosecure. Project Horizon isn't what they told you it is. It's surveillance, a global, private, sold to corporations. They're using our clients' data for something else. If they find me," the sound cut out. Her eyes darted off screen. Then the feed ended. The timestamp read 12 hours ago. She was still alive. I stared at the frozen frame of her face on the screen, the woman I loved. The liar I hated, the fugitive I now had to save. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was breaking. I felt awake. I closed the laptop, grabbed my jacket, and whispered to the empty apartment, "I'm coming, Elena." Then I walked out into the rain. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. Chicago looked like a photograph left too long in water, blurred, gray, edges fading into nothing. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elena's face in that video, the fear behind her whisper. I kept replaying her words in my head. Don't trust anyone at Stratosecure. I'd worked for that company 12 years. They handled national security contracts, private defense data, even political campaign audits. If she was right, then my entire career had been built on the lie she'd just uncovered, and maybe that's why they wanted her gone. I called in sick and drove straight to my office. The building was quiet, half of the staff worked remote now, and that made things easier. I used my clearance to access the secure server room. Inside, rows of black machines blinked like an electronic heartbeat. The name Project Horizon wasn't in the main directory, but I knew where to look: the deep logs, the ghost folders no one was supposed to see. I found it buried under a system labeled Client Integrity Backup. When I opened the first file, my breath caught. It wasn't a client database, it was a live surveillance feed. Thousands of camera streams from private offices, hotel rooms, airports, homes, people who believed their data was safe because we were the ones protecting it. In the corner of the screen, a single line of text repeated every few seconds: property of Venture Core Intelligence Systems. Elena had been right. Stratasecure wasn't protecting information, it was selling it. And now, I was inside their system. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Then a click. The sound of a door unlocking behind me. Michael. It was Ryan, my supervisor. Mid-30s, easy smile. A company man. But that morning, his smile was gone. "What are you doing here?" he asked. His tone was too casual, the kind people use before pulling a trigger. I closed the laptop. "Just checking some anomaly logs." "On a Saturday?" I shrugged. "Old habits." Ryan stepped closer, scanning the room. His eyes caught the cable still plugged into the mainframe. "You shouldn't be here, Mike. IT flagged your access an hour ago." I froze. "Flagged?" He nodded slowly. "Look, I don't know what's going on with Elena, but if she reached out to you, forget it. She's in trouble with some serious people. I think she's trying to stop them," I said. "Project Horizon." His face tightened. "You shouldn't even say that name." He took a deep breath, lowered his voice. "There are levels to this, Mike. You don't want to know how far it goes. Walk away, right now. I'll delete your login trail." But his hand was still behind his back, and I could see the outline of a gun. I didn't think. I just moved. I slammed the laptop shut and swung it into his face. The metal cracked against his jaw, and he went down hard. I ran, alarms blaring, red lights flashing. By the time I reached the parking lot, I could already hear sirens. Corporate ones, not police. I ditched my car 2 miles away and ducked into an old diner on the south side. My hands were shaking. I opened the laptop, the one I'd taken from the server room, and plugged in Elena's flash drive. Hidden in a subfolder was a text file titled phoenixnode.txt. Inside, a list of encrypted IPs and one address to a warehouse in Flagstaff, Arizona. I stared at it for a long moment. She'd gone home. Arizona was where we met, where we tried to build a life before Chicago swallowed it, and maybe where she thought she could end all of this. That night, I rented a black pickup under a false name and started driving southwest. The city lights faded behind me, replaced by the long, open road. The rain turned into dry wind, the air sharp with desert dust. I thought about Elena, about the things I'd said, the things I hadn't. She'd lied to me, but maybe she'd done it to protect me. Or maybe she knew I'd follow her. No matter what, either way, the truth was out there, waiting like a wound that hadn't finished bleeding. Somewhere near Amarillo, I stopped for gas. The station was empty except for a single old man behind the counter, watching the muted TV. I paid cash, and as I turned to leave, he called out without looking up, "You heading west?" "Yeah, be careful," he said. They've been asking about a man driving alone, middle-aged, black pickup. My stomach dropped. "Who's asking?" He finally looked at me, eyes flat, expression unreadable. "Government," they said. I got back into the truck, heart pounding. In the mirror, I saw headlights in the distance, to steady to slow, following. I hit the gas. The road stretched endlessly into the black desert, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. But somewhere beyond that horizon, Elena was waiting. And if she'd started this fire, I was going to end it. By the time I crossed into Arizona, the sky looked burned out, pale. Endless domes stretched above red earth and jagged stone. The air was dry enough to sting. It felt like coming home to a memory I didn't want anymore. Flagstaff wasn't what I remembered. The town had grown, wider roads, more chain stores, fewer people who looked you in the eye. I parked the truck near the outskirts and stared at the address from the flash drive. It pointed to an industrial complex 5 miles west of town, Lot 14, Canyon Ridge Storage. I'd half expected it to be abandoned. It wasn't. A white SUV was parked out front, engine still warm. I killed my headlights, approached on foot, and circled the fence. Inside, through a gap in the corrugated metal, I saw movement of two men in dark suits, one holding a flashlight, the other on a phone. They weren't cops. They moved like corporate field agents, tight formation, calm, rehearsed. In the center of the room, under a hanging light bulb, lay an open crate. Inside were stacks of hard drives, documents sealed in plastic, and a small duffel bag with the initials EK Elena's. I waited until they moved to the far side of the warehouse, then slipped through a side door. The air smelled like rust and engine oil. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. I grabbed the duffel and ducked behind a pillar. Inside, her passport, a burner phone, a pack of cigarettes she hadn't smoked in years, and a single note written on hotel stationery. If you find this, I didn't make it out. They'll come for you too. Don't open the black drive. Burn it. There was a USB drive taped to the back of the note. Black and marked, identical to the one that started all of this. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight heavier than it should have been. The agents must have heard something. One of them shouted, "Check the back." And a flashlight beam swept the wall inches from me. I ran. Bullets cracked through the air, the sound of suppressed gunfire, soft but final. I threw myself behind a crate, breath tearing at my throat. One of the men came around the corner. I saw his reflection in a shard of broken glass, clean-cut earpiece. No hesitation. When he turned, I swung a metal pipe into his wrist. The gun clattered. I hit him again, hard enough that he didn't get back up. The other shouted, "Stop. It's not what you think." But that's what they always say, right before the lie. I took his SUV and was gone before he finished shouting. At a motel just outside town, I finally plugged in the drive. Part of me wanted to obey Elena's note to burn it, walk away, pretend this nightmare was over. But curiosity is a cruel addiction. The drive opened to one file horizon_id. It started with the Stratasecure logo, then switched to a boardroom recording. I saw Ryan, my supervisor, sitting across from men in expensive suits I didn't recognize. One of them said, "Once the system's fully integrated, we won't need government warrants. Horizon will have predictive access, behavior patterns, emotional triggers, spending habits, every citizen, every company, in real time." Ryan nodded. "And the test subjects? Still under observation," the man replied. "Especially Keller. She's useful leverage. Elena hadn't just found the truth, she'd become part of it. My stomach turned. I replayed the video twice, 3 times, until I noticed something in the background, a reflection on the glass wall of the boardroom. A woman standing just outside the frame. Elena, watching, recording. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago. She'd been alive. And if she wasn't now, it meant they'd caught her after this. I called the number on her burner phone. To my surprise, it connected. A woman answered, whispering, "Michael." "Elena?" "No, my name's Claire. I worked with her at VentureCore." Her voice trembled. "She told me if she didn't come back, you'd call. You need to listen. Project Horizon isn't about surveillance. It's control. They're mapping human emotion to market prediction, manipulating decisions before people even make them." She tried to leak the data through Phoenix Node, but the door slammed somewhere on her end. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. Then I realized I wasn't alone. Through the thin motel curtains, a shape moved, someone standing beside my truck, watching. Not moving, just waiting. I switched off the lights, crouched low, and crept toward the window. The figure's outline flickered in the neon glow. A man in a jacket, face hidden by shadow. When I stepped outside, he was gone. But under the windshield wiper, there was an envelope. Inside, a single photo. Me, standing at Elena's father's grave. From a year ago. On the back, written in her handwriting, "You're closer than you think." The desert was silent. No traffic, no sound but the wind. The kind of silence that makes you feel like the world's already ended, and you're just late to notice. Somewhere out there, beyond the canyons, she was waiting for buried. And either way, I wasn't turning back. I got into the truck, dropped the gear, and drove toward the horizon until the stars disappeared behind the dust. By dawn, the road had vanished beneath the desert. Dust swirled in pale light like smoke from a dying fire. My truck wheezed, low on gas, engine warning lights flickering. The machine felt as tired as I did. I'd been driving west all night, chasing a ghost across miles of emptiness. But somewhere past Winslow, I saw the turnoff, a cracked sign half swallowed by sand. Phoenix Node Research Facility, restricted access. Elena's trail ended here. The sun climbed over the ridges, spilling gold across the rusted fences and broken guard posts. The place looked dead, abandoned, but the hum of hidden power lines told me otherwise. I parked behind a collapsed water tower and moved on foot. Every step crunched glass and gravel. My throat was dry, my heart slow and steady, the way it gets before something irreversible. The main gate hung open. Inside the compound stood 3 concrete buildings and a communications dish angled at the empty sky. Near the entrance, fresh tire marks. They'd beaten me here. The first building was gutted, torn out wiring, scorch marks on the walls. In the second, I found computers still running, their screens filled with scrolling code. Across one monitor, I saw her name Keller_access_override. She single quotes deep in here. Recently, a small speaker on the desk clicked alive. Static. Then a voice, a synthetic. Come. Access detected. Michael Reaves verified. I froze. The voice continued. You were not authorized to follow this trail, but you've proven persistent. Perhaps that's enough. Then another sound, faint but real this time, footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, pale under the fluorescent light. Elena. For a second, I couldn't move. I didn't know whether to hold her or scream. She looked older, thinner, eyes hollowed by sleeplessness. But she was alive. You shouldn't have come, she said quietly. I saw the video. I saw what they were doing. Her expression flickered between relief and despair. Then you know why I couldn't tell you. I know you lied. You left me. I was trying to keep you alive. She turned away, pressing a code into a terminal. The screens around us lit up with maps, lines of digital currents weaving through continents. This is Horizon, she said. They call it predictive surveillance. But it's more than that. It learns. Every click, every word, every hesitation. It can predict behavior with 97% accuracy. And soon, it'll shape it. I stared at the glowing data. You're saying it can control people? It already does, she whispered. Every ad, every election, every headline. They use emotion like currency. Horizon sells it. The sound of engines broke through the static of black SUVs approaching fast. Elena shut the monitors. They traced the drive. They know you found me. How do we stop it? I asked. There's a kill protocol, she said. Hidden in the core system. But it's manual. Someone has to be inside when it activates. Her eyes met mine. I understood what she meant before she said it. No, I said. We do it together. She shook her head. You still think there's a we? The compound shook with the force of nearby gunfire. Dust rained from the ceiling. She opened a steel hatch leading underground. This way. We ran through the narrow tunnel as shouts echoed behind us. At the end stood a circular room filled with humming servers, the heart of Horizon. Elena typed furiously, cables sparking under her hands. I can't wipe the data remotely. The core's too integrated. But if I overload it, you'll fry the system. She nodded. And me with it. I grabbed her wrist. There's another way. There isn't. They'll never stop. But if the code burns out here, the entire network dies. The price is one life. I already chose it. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ryan appeared first, gun raised, suit covered in desert dust. Don't, he said, aiming at her. You have no idea what you're destroying. Maybe not, Elena replied, but at least it'll stop being yours. He fired. I moved without thinking. The bullet tore through my shoulder, hot and sharp. Elena screamed, slammed the final key, and hit enter. The servers exploded in light, a blinding flash that swallowed everything. When I woke, the world was silent. Smoke curled around me, the air thick with burning plastic. The machines were dead, melted to slag. The tunnel ceiling had collapsed halfway. Elena. No answer, only static from a broken speaker. Horizon termination. Complete. I crawled to where she'd been. Her body was half buried under twisted steel, her face peaceful as if she'd finally stopped running. For a long time, I couldn't move. Then I reached into my pocket and found the photo she'd left me, the one from her father's grave. I placed it beside her hand. Guess we made it home, I whispered. By the time I stumbled outside, the sun was setting over the desert. The SUVs were gone. The compound burned quietly behind me, sending a thin column of smoke into the orange sky. The world hadn't changed. Not really. But somewhere, deep in the web of signals and code, a silence had spread, a missing heartbeat in the machine. Maybe the system would rebuild. Maybe it wouldn't. But for now, it was quiet. And in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Epilogue 2 months later. I was living under another name in a small town near the California border. I spent mornings fixing engines, nights watching the horizon fade into the Pacific. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window and think about the man I used to be, the husband, the analyst, the believer in order and truth. But truth was never clean. It was glass-heavy, fragile, and always sharp when it broke. One evening, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope. No address, no return stamp. Inside the single flash drive. On it, one file. Horizon_receipt.v1 and a note. You can't kill what watches everything.